Hello and welcome to the Fighting Spirit Podcast. As always, I'm Jason and I'm here to bring you your fight picks for UFC Fight Night to Randamie versus Ladd taking place in Sacramento, California. We have a pretty good card lined up here with the returns of Urijah Faber taking on Ricci Simon. We also have some up-and-coming prospects like Ryan Hall taking on Darren Elkins. It's shaping up to be a very good card. And then, of course, we have our main event where Ladd will be taking on Randamie. Let's get into it, though. Here's the show. Alright, so our main event, as I said earlier, is going to be Jermaine, the Iron Lady Randamie, taking on a really green fighter, but one just a shooting star at the moment, Aspen Ladd, in what should be a very high-ranking contender matchup at Ladies Bantamweight. Let's talk about why I think Ladd is going to be the one to get it done here. So, we know Ladd has some great takedown ability, and I think that's actually going to be what undoes Randamie here. So Randamie is a gritty veteran, but she has a primarily kickboxing background, and I don't think she's going to be able to hang with Ladd if she turns it into a grinding affair. Also, I called Ladd kind of a young up-and-coming prospect. However, Randamie, for her, everything she's done outside in kickboxing, she's only 8-3 in MMA. Ladd is 8-0. So as far as MMA goes, that, grappling mixed with kickboxing, but, this mixed martial arts game, this is something I think Ladd actually has an advantage in. I think she's a more well-rounded fighter, and she also has 5 knockouts over her 8 wins. She does have very accomplished hands. The only thing, though, we've seen Randamie do well against the likes of fighters like Holly Holm, but we know there was a little bit of dirtiness in there with those shots after the bell. So I think if Ladd can keep her guard up at all times, be aware that Randamie could take it into some dirty waters and be hitting her after the bell, doing some stuff that is questionable, I think that Ladd can get it done here. I think that Ladd has the slightly better hands. She obviously gets it done with a higher rate. I think she's got a better fight IQ, and I think that she is the better fighter. One ace in the hole, though, I want to mention it. Randamie trains out of AKA, so we know they actually have the better team there, and maybe she'll be able to, get some of that wrestling experience to shut down Ladd's superior grappling game. However, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Randamie is a grappling fighter, even if she's training at AKA, and I see the Ladd overcoming this and picking up the W in our main event in Sacramento. In our co-main, we will see the return of the California kid, Urijah Faber, taking on another shooting star prospect in Ricci Simon. Ricci Simon has some great victories over Anya, Montel Jackson, Merib Davalavici, and the list goes on and on. This guy has not lost yet in the UFC, and he hasn't taken an L since 2016, back in his Titan FC days, and the guy's only 26 years old, so he was basically a kid back then. And I think that he continues this hot streak and shuts down the comeback kid, as we're calling him here right now, the California kid Urijah Faber. Faber is 40 years old, hasn't had a fight since basically Simon had his loss. He last fought in 2016, defeated Brad Pickett, but we know that he wasn't operating at the highest level when he left. He lost to guys like Jimmy Rivera, he lost to guys like Dominic Cruz. He was over the hill back then, and I think he's still over the hill. When I look at the numbers here, I know that Faber has that grappling game, but I think that Simon might press him here. He's a Gracie Barra student. I think he might be willing to play grappling BJJ. He might be willing to engage in that game with Urijah Faber to test those waters. Hands-wise, I think Simon also has slightly better hands here. Obviously, we know that Faber has 9 KOs, but that's over 34 wins. If we look over at Simon, he's got 5 KOs over 15 wins. He's finishing with his hands or striking at a higher percentage rate, and his finish rate overall is near equal to Faber's. Faber does have a very high-level grappling game, but I think we could see Simon test that, like I said, because he is that great Barra or Gracie Barra student. So with that being said, I think Simon picks up the W here. I think your Faber, the comeback kid, cannot get it done. He's going to not be able to knock Simon off his trajectory, and the kid is only going up. Picking Simon in the co-main. In our next matchup, we have another alpha mailer in Josh Emmett taking on Mirsad Bektic in what should be a very interesting fight. This is very close for me in terms of the numbers, but I think Bektic, the tri-star fighter, edges out our alpha male counterpart in Emmett. Let's talk about why. So I think that Bektic possesses a better grappling game if he chooses to bring this thing to the mat. We know that Emmett swings hard and he swings to the fences with every one of these shots. That's why he got that KO from Michael Johnson in his last outing. But he does have a tendency to lean too heavy on that power, and I think Bektic has slightly better technical skills to stay out of that pocket and engage in him at range. These guys actually have equal reach, so I don't think Bektic's going to have any serious advantage there, but I think that Bektic possesses a little bit more technical talent, and as long as he can avoid the big shots from Emmett, I think he can get it done. I also believe that the TriStar Gym, that Firas Zahabi Gym, is going to be a superior fight camp to Team Alpha Male. Nothing against them. I just like Firas Zahabi more over at TriStar, and so I think there's a little bit of an edge there as well. So we are picking Bektic in this bout. In our next matchup, we have another couple of great stars, or rising stars. We have Beneil Dariush taking on Drakkar Klose. So we have kind of a striker versus grappler dilemma here with Beneil Dariush, I think, being able to get it done. So we know that Beneil Dariush is clearly the better submission artist here. He has 7 submissions over 16 wins, Klose 0. When I look over at the numbers, I think that Beneil Dariush, however, does actually have at least decent enough hands to hang with a guy like Klose. So Klose has 40% finish rate for knockouts. He has 4 KOs over his 10 wins, whereas we look at Dariush, 3 KOs over his 16 wins, and he has 20 fights overall. So clearly, if he wants to get it done, he likes to put it on the mat, but he does have competent enough hands to set up those takedowns, make guys fear the level change, and get in to the pocket and close the distance. I think that Dariush can get it done here. I think he's the slightly superior grappler. He also has a reach advantage, so I think he'll be able to stay a little bit rangy and close that distance when he needs to put on the cage and grind this thing to the ground where he's going to feel the most comfortable. Another thing too, King's MMA for Dariush, MMA Lab for Drakkar Klose. That's kind of a wash as far as fight camps in my opinion. I think they're both very good. Maybe King's being a little better, but they both have great talent training there, so I don't think that's going to be too big of a factor. Either way though, we are picking Dariush, and I think this guy is coming back. I know he had a little bit of a downward slide, but he defeated the likes of Thiago Moises and Drew Dober in his last 2 outings. So again, I think he's going to be able to get it done here. He is our pick in Sacramento. All right, so our next bout is going to have a debuting fighter, Wellington Turman, taking on Carl Baby K Roberson in what should be a pretty interesting middleweight matchup. So I'm not really too sure about this one. I got to be perfectly honest with you guys. I don't think that there is enough data for me to give a 100% confident call on this, but I will let you know that I think that Carl Roberson, he was derailed by Glover Teixeira. We all thought that he was basically going to be able to, kind of put Teixeira into retirement. That didn't work out that way, but I think that he's going to be able to get back on pace here, and I think he's going to be able to pick up a win over this debuting fighter in Wellington Turman. Also, it is a late replacement. Somebody else was originally supposed to be taking on Roberson, so I think that he can get it done. It's tough because obviously there just isn't a whole lot of information here, but I think ultimately Roberson's the superior fighter going up against Wellington. It is a tough call, though. It's very close as far as the available data numbers, so I just want to throw a little grain of salt in there, and I'm not 100% confident on this one, like a lot of the other fights we call, and that's just the way we got to go here. So I'm calling Roberson, but again, it is a tough one to make a call on. In another razor-thin matchup, we will have Cesar the Mutant Ferreira taking on Marvin the Italian Dream Vittori in what will be a great middleweight matchup. So this is going to be a very hard one to call, but I am giving the edge here to the Italian Stallion Vittori because I think that he is the better fighter here. We're talking about a guy that lost a split decision a year ago to Israel Adesanya. This guy knows how to fight, and if you can take Israel to split decision right now, you are basically playing a really well, a really good game. Had he won that fight, who knows? Maybe he's the one that's fighting Kelvin Gastelum and now getting a title shot. We actually don't know what his trajectory could have been had he defeated Stylebender. Now, the MMA math doesn't work, so that's why we look at the rest of the numbers. When I look at Souza, he has that loss to Ian Hines, so he's looking to get, a W back. But the numbers, I think the hands for Vettori are very good. I don't think that Souza's are very good himself, so I think Vettori is able to get it done and set up his takedown and grappling game through his hands against Ferreira. I think Ferreira I've eaten my words before, but I think this match is going to be slightly lopsided. I think Vettori is the much better fighter. I think that he's superior to Ferreira, both in striking and in grappling, and I think that he can get this done in any way that he sees fit. I also like that he trains out of King's MMA, another high-class gym. Souza training over MMA Masters, not nearly the same level of talent there, but, he is a very good fighter nevertheless. Either way, though, I'm saying confidently Vettori gets the W here and gets back on his win streak in Sacramento. In what is the near debuting fight for Mike Rodriguez taking on John Allen Arte. We have John Allen coming out of the Contender Series. He was bounced out of that, and he came back, got a win over in Brazil, and now he's back making another UFC debut because John Vellante had to pull out of the card. So this one is another difficult to call one. These fight nights are always kind of like this, but let's go off the information that we have. So Mike Rodriguez, I think, is a great fighter. He has some real knockout power, especially at light heavyweight. His 8 KOs over his 10 wins, 2 submissions. This guy has very high fight IQ. He's never let this thing go to decision, and he's going up against Arte, who has 9 KOs and 3 submissions over his 13 wins. So both of these guys are very, very violent. They're able to shut the door when they need to. However, I do think that Rodriguez is a better fighter, and I think he's been doing it longer at a higher level. So he came out of the Contender Series with a W, lost the decision to Devin Clark, and then came back and got a win under the lights for UFC Fox 31, Quinta versus Lee 2 against Adam Milstead. So I think he has the experience under the lights. He knows what he's doing, whereas we had Arte, crumble under the lights, under, the tiny tent that is the Dana White Contender Series and not perform up to his highest level. The numbers also support that. I think Rodriguez has the better hands, grappling ability. I think it's dead heat here, but I think the edge in hands, the edge in performance that we've seen at this level gives the overall win here, or projected win, to Mike Rodriguez. He's our pick in this bout. In another great matchup, this time at featherweight, we're going to have Andre Touchy Fili. God, I hate that fight name. But he's taking on Shaman Maurice in what will be a great matchup. So both these guys train out of high-level MMA gyms. Black House for Maurice, Team Alpha Male for Andre, and I think that they are both very good fighters. However, when we look at aspects of the game, Maurice really has no ground game to speak of whatsoever. The guy likes to put you out with his hands any way he can, but he does not like to grapple, and I think that's where Fili is going to have an advantage here. So Fili, 8 KOs and 3 submissions over 19 wins, just the 5 KOs for Maurice over his 11 wins. I think that Fili also performs at just under the lights a little bit better. He's a little streaky, wins losses. He last got a victory of Miles Jury, but we saw Sodiq Yusuff totally dismantle Shaman Maurice in their last outing on the Barboza versus Gaethje card on the feet. I thought that Maurice really had nothing to offer there. I thought that, he was just too slick with his movements, and Maurice just wanted to kind of stand a little more stationary. I think Fili is a little more active fighter, and he's willing to be more dynamic to get this done, be that taking it to the mat if he can score the takedown, or staying on the feet and staying, clever and creative and moving, in and out, making a nice stick and move type of matchup. So I do like Fili here. I think he has the better hands, and I think that if he wanted to grapple with Maurice, he's going to have an advantage there all day. With that being said, we are picking Touchy Fili in this fight. All right, so this next fight here is really tough to call. We have Juliana, the Venezuelan Vixen Pena, taking on Nico Montano. So Nico Montano is our 125-pound The Ultimate Fighter winner, and we have Juliana Pena, who's already been fighting at very high levels. Her last loss was to Valentina Shevchenko, and before that, she had wins over Kat Zingano and Jessica Ai, a couple of legends really in the women's divisions. However, she hasn't fought in a little while, so those victories against Ai and Zingano came in 15 and 16, and then that loss to Shevchenko came back in 17, and then now we have Montano fighting her at a lower weight class. Wait, scratch that. This is actually going to be a bantamweight matchup. I do apologize. So it will not actually be at flyweight. Either way, though, for the information we have, I think that Montano can get it done here. I think we saw a really good, fighting out of her when she was in the Ultimate Fighter with her win over Roxanne Modafferi, and we saw that Modafferi recently defeated Shevchenko's sister. Not that that's, any great accomplishment like defeating Valentina, but I think that it does show that she does have the chops to hang with a great fighter like Pena. Pena also, due to her layoff, potential ring rust, I know she's only 29 years of age, I think that it could be a little hard for her to get back in there. Granted, Montano's also had a layoff since 2017, so maybe this one is just a bit of a coin flip. The numbers point to Montano, but personally, this I think is another grain of salt fight. Both fighters are fairly green. Montano 4-2, Pena 8-3. Not a whole lot of experience under the hood there, and I think we have to take that into consideration and give you a little grain of salt. I don't really like either fighters ultimately, but if I had to pick and going by the numbers, I would pick Montano in this fight. In our next matchup, this fight should be higher on the card. I was talking to my buddy about this, and I don't know why it isn't. I don't know why this guy isn't getting a push. Either one of these guys. We got a veteran and a great prospect in Ryan the Wizard Hall taking on Darren the Damage Elkins somewhere in the prelim card. This thing should be moved up. It should be main event of the prelim or at least be part of the main card. I don't know why they've pushed this one so far down, but hey, it is what it is. So Ryan Hall is basically a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu legend at this point, has multiple championships, and is just one hell of a grappler, and he decided to take his talents down to MMA, or over to MMA, and Darren Elkins is just a bad mother effer, and he's been fighting in the UFC for a very long time. This guy is gritty, salty, and it will be very interesting to see how such an accomplished BJJ star in Ryan Hall will deal with a guy who's just been doing it forever, like Darren Elkins. So Darren Elkins only been submitted once in his career. Let's just keep that in mind. So a lot of guys have tried and not been able to succeed. In fact, it was only Michael Johnson that was able to succeed back in January 14th, 2018, so it has happened once, but we don't know if it can happen again. When I look over at Hall, he's got limited information, and he's basically only fought a lot of, older guys and guys that are a little less talented. So he has win over the GOAT Artem Lobov, Gray Maynard, and then BJ Penn. So obviously the two legends there being Penn and Maynard, and then Lobov, the Reddit GOAT. He won a bare knuckle boxing match against Paulie Malignaggi. So, hey, I guess he ain't too bad. But either way, Ryan Hall doesn't have a whole lot of experience here, and I think experience might play a factor here. When I look at Elkins, this guy was on a tear up until losing to Volkanovski. He could have easily been fighting Jose Aldo, instead of Volkanovski just a few months ago, about a year ago. And he could be on an entirely different trajectory towards the end of his career here. This guy defeated Michael Johnson, Ted Fermuzzi, Mirsad Bektic, Chad Skelly. In this great run from the year 2016 to 2018, he was looking great, and then he just got drilled by Volkanovski, took a loss to Lamas, and I think he's really looking to avenge here. And this is one of those times where, I say this, that my numbers, I'll be doing them, and I'll be like, no, that can't be. How the hell is that happening? And this is the case here, because as much as I like Ryan Hall, I think the kid is super talented. He's probably one of the highest level grapplers in the UFC right now. I have Elkins winning this one. I don't know if it's just inexperience. He just hasn't had enough time in the UFC to build up stats or what the deal is. But Elkins, ultimately, I have picking up the W here, and I'm a little dumbfounded by it. I think ultimately Elkins is going to have the better hands. He's just been doing it longer. And if he can, not be taken down and, taken advantage of, I think that Elkins could, do well here for sure. It's just tough for me to call. I really wanted to pick Hall here. I was like, Hall's going to win this. Let me go through the numbers. Punch him all in. Oh, he's losing. Wow. All right. I had to take a step back. Elkins is a pretty big guy for 145, so maybe that's where his edge comes in. I know Hall, he's not the biggest guy. He's kind of like average size here. Also, their ages are about equal here, too. So 34, 35 years of age. And, I know I'm kind of rambling about this one a little bit, but this is the most dumbfounded fight I've had on the entire card. But ultimately, we got to pick Elkins here. I think he has more experience. I think he has better talent with his hands. And we have seen him have great defense for any kind of grappling with, like I said, that just single submission over his 31 fights. So I think he knows what he's doing. If Ryan Hall can't manage to maybe get him in a quick heel hook early on before his foot gets sweaty. We'll see what happens, though. Either way, we are picking the damage in this fight. In our next matchup, we will have an alpha male fighter, Ping Yong Liu, taking on Jonathan Martinez in bantamweight. And so this will be another very interesting fight. This one is also razor thin, but I think that Martinez has the better hands here. I think he's your typical, I know he's from the U.S., but Mexican boxer, and I think he's going to be willing and ready to step into the pocket and put the pain on Ping Liu. However, Ping Liu, I think, does have a slight grappling edge here, so if he could manage to impose his will and get this thing to the mat, I think that he could potentially get a W here. However, I just think that Martinez has shown that he has very good takedown defense, and I also believe that he has the better hands here so that he could, keep it standing and inflict some early damage on Liu. When we look at also their past matchups, we can see that Martinez has derailed a Chinese star in Buuren just, a few months ago. He did lose to Sukum Top before that, but he got right back on. And then when I look over at Liu, the guy hasn't lost since 2013, but he hasn't really fought any great talent yet. He's been kind of just hanging down at the bottom, and this was really his first test. Also, his last win was via split decision against Martin Day, so, it's hard to say, where he's performing. Is he performing to his peak level? Is he, ready to see a guy like Martinez who just has a lot more, I think, experience at this point? I guess they kind of have equal experience. I'm over talking Martinez here because I like him more. Either way, though, I'm picking Martinez in Sacramento, California. All right, another very difficult to call fight. Brianna the Bull Van Buuren taking on Liviana the Brazilian Gangster Souza in what should be a very interesting strawweight matchup. So we know that Van Buuren is just on a tear over the Invicta organization. Now, I've said it before, Invicta doesn't always have the best run or the best talent pool, we'll say, so it's tough to judge talent from there coming into the UFC. But Liviana Souza has proven she's gotten it done here with wins over Alex Chambers and Sarah Frota in the UFC, so we know that her talent level is definitely cemented in. Can the Bull derail, though? That's the question. And the answer I'm given is I don't think she can. I think that Liviana is a slightly better fighter. I think she has a little bit more experience, especially under the big lights where she's performed very well. I also like her submission game a lot more. Those 8 submissions over 13 wins. I think she possesses a better grappling game. The one thing I can say about Van Buuren, though, the Bull, is that she does train over American kickboxing, and so she is exposing herself to, really high-level talent there. Then I think she could potentially, show something in the fight that maybe Souza isn't going to see coming. But ultimately, I think that the talent for Souza is too deep at this level. Also, significant size advantage here. We got a 5'4" fighter in Souza going up against a 4'11" fighter. So she is small, and I think that she's not going to be able to hang ultimately. We'll see how it plays out, though. Either way, we are picking Souza in this fight. All right, in our last fight of the night, we will have, or first one, maybe look at it, last fight of this podcast anyways, Benito Lopez taking on Vince Morales in what should be an interesting bantamweight matchup. So another alpha male fighter. This is really an alpha male showcase in a lot of ways, and maybe that's why it's taking place in Sacramento. We have the Golden Boy, Lopez, and I think he's going to end up picking up a W here against Morales. I think that he has the slightly better hands. I also think that he has the slightly better camp. He does have those 3 KOs over his 9 wins against, Morales' 5 KOs over his 9 wins. But I think ultimately he possesses a little bit better technical boxing and striking. Also, I like his alpha male camp a little bit more. Either way, though, these guys are fairly evenly matched. When I say I like him better, it's by a small margin. It's razor thin, this one. But I ultimately think that Lopez is going to get it done and start alpha male on a good streak or a good track in Sacramento. So to go over those fighters one more time, let's go through them. We have Ladd, Simon, Bektic, Dariush, Roberson, Vettori, Rodriguez, Fili, Montano, Elkins, Souza, Martinez, and finally Lopez to close things out. Those are your picks for UFC Fight Night Sacramento. This brings us on to housekeeping. Please get in touch with the Fighting Spirit Podcast at fightingspiritpodcast@gmail.com for all your questions and comments. We're also on Instagram, Twitter. My handle is at MMA FightPicks01 on Twitter. Get in touch with me there. Also, we're on YouTube, your favorite podcast platform or app of choice. We're everywhere that you can listen or absorb content, I think, at this point. Please like the Facebook page for all of our updates there as well. So I will be back with the retrospective on Sunday to go over this card. Hopefully we'll do pretty well. I'm pretty pleased with our last outing. There are some questionable ones in here. I'm not the most confident about this card overall. These fight nights sometimes get a little wishy-washy with the amount of information and quality of fights. So it's not as clear-cut, I think, as something like last week where I was 100% confident about most of the fights. However, this one, a little less so. So that being said, like I said, we'll be back with the retrospective. We will also potentially have a beer review. There might be a little bonus episode coming in. I have an idea for kind of a contrast with the Stone beer review that I did just a few days ago. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And so I will be back in touch soon. Until then, happy fight picking.